Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more The Diary of Anne Frank. We'll be picking up here where we left off, starting the next day, Saturday, June the 20th, 1942. So, yeah. With that said, let's hop into this. Saturday, June the 20th, 1942. Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. Paper has more patience than people. I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed and was sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless, wondering whether to stay in or go out. I finally stayed where I was, brooding. Yes, paper does have more patience, and since I'm not planning to let anyone else read this stiff-backed notebook grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, it probably won't make a bit of difference. Now I'm back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Let me put it more clearly. Since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world. And I'm not. I have loving parents and a 16-year-old sister, and there are about 30 people I can call friends. I have a throng of admirers who can't keep their adoring eyes off me and who sometimes have to resort to using a broken pocket mirror to try to catch a glimpse of me in the classroom. I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. No, on the surface I seem to have everything except my one true friend. All I think about when I'm with friends is having a good time. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary everyday things. We don't seem to be able to get any closer, and that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide in each other. In any case, that's just how things are, and unfortunately, they're not liable to change. This is why I've started the diary, to enhance the image of this long awaited friend in my imagination. I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people would do, but I want the diary to be my friend, and I'm going to call this friend Kitty. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty, if I were to plunge right in, I'd better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. My father, the most adorable father I've ever seen, didn't marry my mother until he was 36 and she was 25. My sister, Margot, was born in Frankfurt am Main in Germany in 1926. I was born on June the 12th, 1929. I lived in Frankfurt until I was 4. Because we're Jewish, my father immigrated to Holland in 1933 when he became the managing director of the Dutch Opekta Company, which manufactures products used in making jam. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank, went with him to Holland in September while Margot and I were sent to Aachen to stay with our grandmother. Margot went to Holland in December and I followed in February when I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margot. I started right away at the Montessori nursery school. I stayed there until I was 6, at which time I started first grade. In 6th grade, my teacher was Miss Couperas, the principal. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell because I'd been accepted at the Jewish Lyceum, where Margot also went to school. Our lives were not without anxiety since the relatives of Germany were suffering under Hitler's anti-Jewish laws. After the pogroms in 1938, my two uncles, my mother's brothers, fled Germany, finding safe refuge in North America. My elderly grandmother came to live with us. She was 73 years old at the time. After May 1940, the good times were few and far between. First, there was the war, when the capitulation and the arrival of the Germans, which is when the trouble started for the Jews. Our freedom was severely restricted by a series of anti-Jewish decrees. Jews were required to wear a yellow star. Jews were required to turn in their bicycles. Jews were forbidden to use streetcars. Jews were forbidden to ride in cars, even their own. Jews were required to do their shopping between 3 and 5 p.m. Jews were required to frequent only Jewish-owned barber shops and beauty parlors. Jews were forbidden to be out on the streets between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Jews were forbidden to go to theaters, movies, or any other forms of entertainment. Jews were forbidden to use swimming pools, tennis courts, hockey fields, or any other athletic fields. Jews were forbidden to go rowing. Jews were forbidden to take part in any athletic activity in public. Jews were forbidden to sit in the gardens or those of their friends after 8 p.m. Jews were forbidden to visit Christians in their homes. Jews were required to attend Jewish schools, etc. You couldn't do this and you couldn't do that, but life went on. Jackie always told me I don't dare do anything anymore 'cause I'm afraid it's not allowed. In the summer of 1941, Grandma got sick and had to have an operation, so my birthday passed with little celebration. In the summer of 1940, we didn't do much for my birthday either, since the fighting had just ended in Holland. Grandma died in January 1942. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the others, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. The four of us are still doing well, and that brings me to the present date of June the 20th, 1942, and the solemn dedication of my diary. Saturday, June the 20th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, let me get started right away. It's nice and quiet now. Father and Mother are out, and Margot has gone to play ping pong with some other young people at the Friend Trees. I've been playing a lot of ping pong myself lately, so much that 5 of us girls have formed a club. It's called the Little Dipper -2. A really silly name, but it's based on a mistake. We wanted to give our club a special name, and because there were 5 of us, we came up with the idea of the Little Dipper. We thought it consisted of 5 stars, but we turned out to be wrong. It has 7, like the Big Dipper, which explains the -2. Ilse Wagner has a ping pong set, and the Wagners let us play in their big dining room whenever we want. Since we five ping pong players like ice cream, especially in the summer, and since you get hot playing ping pong, our games usually end with a visit to the nearest ice cream parlor that allows Jews, either Oasis or Delphi. We've long since stopped hunting around for our purses or money. Most of the time, it's so busy in Oasis that we manage to find a few generous young men of our acquaintance or an admirer to offer us more ice cream than we could eat in a week. You're probably a little surprised to hear me talking about admirers at such a tender age. Unfortunately, or not, as the case may be, this vice seems to be rampant at our school. As soon as a boy asks if he can bicycle home with me and we get to talking, 9 times out of 10, I can be sure he'll become enamored on the spot and won't let me out of his sight for a second. His ardor eventually cools, especially since I ignore his passionate glances and pedal blithely on my way. If it gets so bad that they start rambling on about asking father's permission, I swerve slightly on my back, my school bag falls, and the young man feels obliged to get off his bike and hand it to me, by which time I've switched the conversation to another topic. These are the most innocent types. Of course, there are those who blow you kisses or try to take hold of your arm, but they're definitely knocking on the wrong door. I get off my bike and either refuse to make further use of their company or act as if I'm insulted and tell them in no uncertain terms to go on home without me. There you are. We've now laid the basis of our friendship. Until tomorrow. Yours, Anne. Sunday, June the 21st, 1942. Dearest Kitty, our entire class is quaking in its boots. The reason, of course, is the upcoming meeting in which the teachers decide who will be promoted to the next grade and who will be kept back. Half the class is making bets. GZ and I laugh ourselves sick at the two boys behind us, CN and Jacques Cosernut, who have staked their entire vacation savings on their bet. From morning to night, it's, "You're going to pass." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." Even G's pleading glances and my angry outbursts can't calm them down. If you ask me, there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back. But teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. Maybe this time they'll be unpredictable in the right direction for a change. I'm not so worried about my girlfriends and myself. We'll make it. The only subject I'm not sure about is math. Anyway, all we can do is wait. Until then, we keep telling each other not to lose heart. I get along pretty well with all my teachers. There are 9 of them, 7 men and 2 women. Miss Keesing, the old fogey who teaches math, was mad at me for the longest time because I talked so much. After several warnings, he assigned me extra homework. An essay on the subject, a chatterbox. A chatterbox, what can you write about that? I'd worry about that later, I decided. I jotted down the assignment in my notebook, tucked it in my bag, and tried to keep quiet. That evening, after I finished the rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. Anyone could ramble on and leave big spaces between words, but the trick was to come up with convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. I thought and suddenly I had an idea. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Keesing had assigned me and was satisfied. I argued that talking is a female trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control, but that I would never be able to break myself of the habit since my mother talked as much as I did, if not more, and that there's not much you can do about inherited traits. Mr. Keesing had a good laugh at my arguments, but when I proceeded to talk my way through the next class, he assigned me a second essay. This time it was supposed to be on an incorrigible chatterbox. I handed it in and Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole classes. However, during the 3rd class, he'd finally had enough. And Frank, as punishment for talking in class, write an essay entitled "Quack, Quack, Quack," said Mistress Chatterback. The class roared. I had to laugh too, though I'd nearly exhausted my ingenuity on the topic of chatterboxes. It was time to come up with something else, something original. My friend Sane, who's good at poetry, offered to help me write the essay from beginning to end in verse. I jumped for joy. Keesing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I'd make sure the joke was on him. I finished my poem and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who were bitten to death by the father because they quacked too much. Luckily, Keesing took the joke the right way. He read the poem to the class, adding his own comments and several other classes as well. Since then, I've been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned to any extra homework. On the contrary, Keesing's always making jokes these days. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, June the 24th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, it's sweltering. Everyone is huffing and puffing, and in this heat, I have to walk everywhere. Only now do I realize how pleasant a streetcar is, but we Jews are no longer allowed to make use of this luxury. Our own 2 feet are good enough for us. Yesterday at lunchtime, I had an appointment with the dentist on Jan Lukinstraat. It's a long way from our school on Stadstimmer Tuinen. That afternoon, I nearly fell asleep at my desk. Fortunately, people automatically offer you something to drink. The dental assistant is really kind. The only mode of transportation left to us is the ferry. The ferryman took Joseph Israel Kade took us across when we asked him to. It's not the fault of the Dutch that we Jews are having such a bad time. I wish I didn't have to go to school. My bike was stolen during Easter vacation, and Father gave Mother's bike to some Christian friends for safekeeping. Thank goodness summer vacation is almost here. One more week and our torment will be over. Something unexpected happened yesterday morning as I was passing the bicycle racks. I heard my name being called. I turned and there was the nice boy I'd met the evening before at my friend Wilma's. He's Wilma's second cousin. I used to think Wilma was nice, which she is, but all she ever talks about is boys, and that gets to be a bore. He came toward me somewhat slyly and introduced himself as Hello Silberberg. I was a little surprised and wasn't sure what he wanted, but it didn't take me long to find out. He asked if I would allow him to accompany me to school. As long as you're headed that way, I'll go with you, I said. And so we walked together. Hello is 16 and good at telling all kinds of funny stories. He was waiting for me again this morning, and I suspect he will be from now on. And we'll go ahead and end this episode there. So yeah, she finishes her introduction to the diary itself, and we get to see some more interaction of her with her classmates. So yeah. It's wild. But yeah, she had some issues with her teacher, Mr. Keesing, and I think she kind of won him over. It's like, okay, all right, all right. Talks about playing ping pong. Gave a little history of who she was, talking about being born in 29? Yeah. Living in Holland, aka the Netherlands. But yeah, she spent time staying with her sister because her parents would be going elsewhere trying, I guess, just talking to people, trying to find a way out of Holland and stuff. So yeah. Yeah, ping pong, boys, her math teacher, and then yeah, apparently she has a number of admirers, as she tells it, which kind of annoys her. Some of them she's like, well, I guess. Since, but if they get really touchy, pushy, filly, she's like, no, So yeah, while I think she likes the attention a bit, she's not really into the whole dating thing, so yeah. It's pretty good. But let's end this episode there. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing. Ask them to cite their sources. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.